The NBA has an array of young stars and talent. Two players who are at the forefront of this talent are Jayson Tatum and Devin Booker. With both players being all-stars this season, we know that these players are good, but who's better? Well, as you can tell from the title, that's what we're looking at in today's video, so let's get started. Starting with the stats. From the stats at face value, you can see that both players are good, but Tatum takes it in most categories. In fairness though, some categories like assists, he only averages 0.1 more, so really in a lot of these categories they're close and even, but Tatum does have the better overall stats. Moving on to offense. In my last video I broke offense down into 3 categories: scoring, playmaking and clutch. Let's start with scoring. So for scoring, I look at how well each player can score at all 3 levels, so the 3-pointer, the mid-range and at the basket. Looking at each player's shot chart, you can see that they're very similar with shot selection and they are both very versatile scorers. For some context of these graphs, the lighter blue dots and areas mean that this player shoots lower than the league average from that specific area, and the darker shade of the dots mean that the player shoots better from that area. So dark blue is on par or a little bit better than the average, and the very dark blue, almost black dots mean they're very good from those spots. You can see that on both graphs that both players shoot well from most areas, but Booker has a lot more darker areas, especially in the mid-range. Now let's look at the percentages in those areas. So to start, we have the 3-point shot. We already know that he shoots 36.2% compared to Tatum, who shoots 39.8%. So Tatum is better here. Then we have the mid-range, which is classed as 10 feet or further away from the basket, then ending at the 3-point line. Devin Booker is shooting an incredible 50.3% from here. He's attempted 199 shots and made 100 from there. He ranks 7th in the league for mid-range percentage out of players who have attempted more than 100 mid-range shots this season. Only behind elite players such as Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Jokic, Paul George and Embiid. Tatum, on the other hand, shoots 42.9% from the mid-range, which is still great, but he isn't anywhere near Booker here. Now for the tiebreaker, inside the paint. Tatum is shooting 50.4% from inside the paint compared to Booker, who shoots 59.6%. Again, both are good, but Booker clearly takes it. Overall, Tatum scores more points per game, but he attempts 20.6 shots, compared to Booker, who attempts 18.5 per game. If Booker were to attempt 2 more shots, because he shoots roughly 50% from the field, he would make around 1 more shot. Even if that's a 2-point shot, his points per game would then be higher than Tatum's. So overall, Tatum may score more, but Booker is much more efficient. Personally, I would give the edge to Booker because of this, and the fact that if he attempted the same amount of shots as Tatum, he would average more points. Then we have playmaking. Neither player are amazing playmakers and they average nearly the exact same assists. To see a bigger difference, you have to look at assist percentage, which is the percentage of field goals that a player assisted on whilst they were on the floor. Tatum's assist percentage is 20.7% compared to Booker with 21.6%. So again, not much of a difference, but personally I would call this category even. Now onto the last offensive category, and that's clutch. In my last versus video, I used clutch because I was talking about Kyrie Irving and Damian Lillard, who are notorious for hitting clutch shots. I was contemplating putting this category in today's video, but when I did the research, the numbers actually surprised me. So this is the criteria I used to determine the clutch period as: the team must be either up or down by 5 points, and the stats are taken from 4 time frames. The first is the last 5 minutes of the game, as players can still change the outcome without having to hit a buzzer beater. The second is the last minute, as it allows for multiple big time plays and possessions. The third is the last 30 seconds, as it's one of the last possessions of the game. And finally, the last 10 seconds. This is where the buzzer beaters and late game winners happen. The stats I will look at will be the players' totals for the season of field goals attempted, field goals made, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage and effective field goal percentage. So with the criteria out of the way, let's look at the stats. Starting with the last 5 minutes. Both players have attempted a similar amount of shots this season in this time frame, which helps when comparing, but you can clearly see that Tatum has more effective and efficient numbers in the last 5 minutes. Then we move on to the last minute. Again, both players have attempted a similar number of shots, but Tatum has made twice the amount. and his shooting percentages blow Booker out of the water too, besides his 3-point percentage. Moving on to the last 30 seconds, both players have attempted the same amount of shots in this time frame, but Tatum again has just been clinical, making 70% of his shots. Then we move on to the last 10 seconds, where it's the same again. Tatum is just lethal in the clutch. I don't care whether it's a layup, a mid-range or a three-pointer, whatever Tatum does works. So overall, this clutch category easily goes to Tatum. He seemed to improve with every time frame, meaning he was more effective and efficient the closer the game was, whereas Booker shrank quite honestly. So overall for offense, Booker was the better scorer, being more efficient and averaging nearly the same amount of points. Then playmaking, I believe it was even, as Tatum only averaged 0.1 more assists than Booker, and Booker was only 1% better on his assist percentage. Then for clutch, as you've just seen, Tatum is a monster, so for offense they're even in my opinion. But now let's look at defense. Defensively, just looking at the stats, Tatum is a better defender on paper. I used defensive win shares as a stat in my last video, which means how many games a player has helped his team win due to his defense. Both players have defensive win shares of 1.2, so they're again exactly even. To look at it even further, you would have to watch each player play. And from my own personal opinion, I would say Tatum is a better defender. He possesses all the right qualities as he's 6'8", meaning he can defend both guards and bigs, but he's also very quick on his feet. He's strong and athletic, so the mix of all these things allow him to be a very versatile defender. So for defense, you'll have to form your own opinion, as stats don't tell the full story, nor do they represent their abilities. Now moving on to value, we've just seen what each player brings to the table both offensively and defensively, but how valuable are these things to their team? Well, Booker has helped lead the Suns to the 2nd seed in the West with a 24-11 record, whilst Tatum sits at the 4th seed in the East with a 19-17 record. Booker leads the Suns in points per game whilst being 2nd in assists and steals, only behind Chris Paul. He's 4th in field goal percentage, which is impressive as he attempts the most shots on the team. Compare that to Tatum, who's 1st in points per game whilst also 2nd in rebounds and steals, but also 3rd in assists. You can see that both players bring a lot of value to their team, and Tatum is arguably the best on the Celtics, with Jaylen Brown close behind. But Booker isn't miles ahead of Chris Paul, and there's an argument to be made that CP is better. But what about when these players don't play? Well, Tatum has missed 5 games this season and Booker has missed 4. In these games, the Celtics have a record of 2 wins and 3 losses, and the Suns have a record of 2 wins and 2 losses. So technically the Celtics need Tatum to win more so than the Suns need Booker to win, but it doesn't tell the whole story, as the Celtics faced Philly in 2 of those games and they are one of the best teams in the league. So if they face an easier opponent, they would have a record of possibly 4-1. Well, either way, there's one final stat I will give for this value category, and that is win shares. This is how many wins a player has basically been responsible for this season. Tatum has 2.6 win shares compared to Booker, who is 2.3. Again, these players are so close, but that's really as far as you can take it without going into very advanced stats. Now for the final overview. For stats, we saw that Tatum was better overall. Then we had offense. For scoring, Booker was better. Playmaking, I said they were both even, and for clutch, Tatum took the cake. Then for defense, again, it's too close to call, so you'll have to put your own take on it. And then finally for value, honestly from the stats I still couldn't decide. You could argue Booker for leading his team to the better record, or you could argue Tatum for being a bigger piece of his team's system. So that's it. There's the stats and a few comments on both players' behalves. I've given some of my own opinion, but I want to hear yours now, so whatever you think, let me know in the comments below. I love reading and replying to your comments and seeing your side of the story. For me personally, I would take Tatum as he's more of a well-rounded player. He can score, rebound and do a bit of playmaking too. Booker can do these things, don't get me wrong, but Booker won't consistently go out there and give you a double-double in my opinion, whereas Tatum is more likely to do that. I appreciate both these players, and making this video has made me appreciate Booker even more, as his shooting numbers are so efficient it makes me think that he could lead the league in scoring in the coming years. But that's just what I think. Like I said, if you think differently, please let me know in the comments below. And if you have any suggestions for which 2 players I should compare next, let me know. I'll be sure to read it. But that's all for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed, and if you did, a like and subscribe would help me out massively. We're nearly at 50 subscribers, so if you do like this content, then subscribe to see more. That's all from me, and I'll see you in the next one.